questions from the audience. Mr. Patrick, please go ahead.
Okay, شكرا جزيلا. صباح الخير. أنا اسمي باتريك ميني. أنا المدير قسم تنفيذ القانون في سلطة دبي للخدمات المالية. So today, thank you very much, shukran gazilan, for coming to this session. I know it's early and so we haven't got a full house, but for those of you who have turned up, I'm very grateful. So what am I going to talk to you today about? I'm going to talk about does enforcing insider trading laws matter? بالعربي ما مدى أهمية فرض قوانين التداول الداخلي. Okay, so that's it for my Arabic for the rest of the session because I've only got 20 minutes and if I was going to do it all in Arabic it would probably take at least an hour. So, all right, so one of the things about insider trading is that as a crime, insider trading is observable. You can see whether or not there is insider trading in a market because you can see whether or not the price of a particular security moves ahead of a price-sensitive announcement. And that will be your indicator that there is insider trading in your market. So the more trading you have ahead of an announcement and the less trading you have after an announcement, the more insider trading you have in your market. To the extent that an academic called Mr. Bhattacharya, Dr. Bhattacharya did a study in 1999 of the Bolsa Mexicana, the Mexican stock exchange. And he looked at the extent to which there were price movements before and after price-sensitive announcements. And what he found was all of the price movement occurred before the announcement and none of it occurred after the announcement, which caused him to come up with the title, When an Event is Not an Event, the Curious Case of an Emerging Market. And so what that was really saying was that at that time, the Mexican market was so unclean, had so much insider trading, that the price of the announcement, the price of the information which was announced was already built in to the share price before the announcement was made, because so many people knew about that and were trading on it. And I think, and then Mr. Bhattacharya then subsequently did another study, and he did it with another academic called Mr. Dayouk. And what they did was they were given access to trading data from exchanges from 89 markets around the world, including both emerging markets and developed markets. And what they looked at was they wanted to find out, well, actually, does having an insider trading law matter? Does enforcing that law matter? What is the effect on the market itself? What does it do to the cost of capital in that market? And so what they did was they looked at, first of all, they looked at whether or not that market had an insider trading rule. And then the second thing they looked at was that insider trading law enforced? And at what time was it enforced? And then they looked to see, well, what was the effect on the cost of capital in those markets which did enforce their insider trading rules as compared with those markets which didn't enforce those insider trading rules? And what they found was, unsurprisingly, was that there was a significant difference in the cost of capital between those markets which did enforce insider trading rules and those which didn't. So the cost of capital was much lower in those markets which effectively enforced their insider trading rules. So that means that those markets then would attract more issuers because issuers obviously want to issue securities in markets where cost of capital is lower. That is that they can issue less shares for the same amount of capital in a clean market than they can in an unclean market. And so what that does is it attracts, so first of all, because it's a clean market and because investors can observe it's a clean market, then it attracts investors, and then in turn that then attracts issuers. And so what you have is you then create what's called a virtuous circle. That is that you attract capital, you attract issuers, and the market becomes deeper and more liquid. And everybody knows that deeper and more liquid markets are also less susceptible to market manipulation. So as I say, there is a positive benefit. And then they did a follow-up study in 2004, and then they looked at emerging markets, and they said, okay, well, we assume that having insider trading laws will have a beneficial effect on the market, and that enforcing those laws is an additional benefit. But let's test this and see. So these two researchers, they took the same data they had, and they went and had a look and said, okay, if we compare those markets that have insider trading laws and don't enforce them against those markets that have insider trading laws and do enforce them, and then those markets that don't have insider trading laws at all, what do we see? And what they found was that in emerging markets, 80% at that time had insider trading laws, but only 30% of those had enforced those laws. And interestingly, in the Arab world at that time, the only jurisdiction or the only market where there was enforcement of insider trading laws was my friends from Oman here, and so they were recognised. But at that time, no other markets in the Arab world had enforced their insider trading laws. Obviously, since then, there have been a number of markets where there have been action and prosecutions in relation to insider trading. The CMA in Saudi Arabia has had quite a few successful prosecutions. I know that Egypt was looking at investigating the sons of Hosni Mubarak in relation to insider trading. So there has been an improvement, but still, at that time, 80% of emerging markets had insider trading laws, 30% of them, only 30% had enforced them. And what they found was that actually, in those markets where they had insider trading laws, but they didn't enforce them, that the cost of capital was higher than in those markets which didn't have insider trading laws at all. And this is a slightly surprising result. But what the study actually found was, if you don't have an insider trading law, you're actually better off than having an insider trading law and then not enforcing it. And the reasons for this are a little bit complicated and revolve around game theory, and I don't have the time to sort of go into that. But I mean, it's a matter of, when in a market where there are no insider trading laws, everybody knows there's no insider trading laws, so it's in that respect, everybody knows that everybody's trading on inside information. Whereas in a market where you have insider trading laws, you'll have some people, because it's the law, they'll obey the law, but you still have a large number of people who say, well, it's the law, but I can see it's not being enforced, so I'll take the risk. And so therefore that makes the level playing field even more uneven than it would be if you didn't have an insider trading law. Okay, so sorry, I haven't been moving the slides. Okay, so and so that resulted in this study which said when no law is better than a good law. So the challenges of enforcing insider trading laws. So what I'm going to talk about now is, okay, what do we do in order to be better at enforcing insider trading laws? And the first thing I would say, and I've been doing this for 25 years, and I've investigated and taken enforcement action in relation to insider trading both criminally and administratively. And from my experience, I can tell you, it's very difficult. It's a big challenge, and it really needs a big commitment to be able to do it well and effectively. What you need five things. First of all, you need political will. Secondly, you need well-drafted laws with a range of options. Thirdly, well-resourced, skilled investigators, and that's probably one of the most important things. Fourthly, prosecutors who understand markets and the importance of enforcing insider trading laws. And decision makers and judges who understand markets, recognise the importance of preventing insider trading, and are prepared to impose sanctions that act as a credible deterrent. So first of all then, political will. In order to get the laws and resources you need to be able to do this well, you need political support. You need commitment by those in power, a recognition that enforcing insider trading laws is important. It has economic benefits for the country, so we need to commit resources to it, and we need to make sure that we have laws that are fit for purpose. And I think one of the issues that we have in emerging markets is that one of the obstacles to that political will is that in emerging markets, you have a situation where market insiders tend to have more political power than market outsiders, and that certainly was the case in Mexico back in 1999. And also personal relationships are very important in emerging markets, and sharing confidential information is a way of reinforcing those personal relationships. So it does have, there is a value, if you like, in sharing inside information. And I think what that leads to then is a sense that, well, actually, is there really anything wrong with this? Is there anything wrong with insider trading? Well, yes, there is a law that says it's bad, but actually, is it really that bad? Am I really doing something? Am I really hurting somebody by doing this? And so that perception is one that you have to overcome. You have to be able to change that mindset, because until you can change that mindset, then it's very difficult to actually change behaviour. And I think what we've seen in the developed markets is that the impetus for really enforcing insider trading laws effectively is some sort of a financial crisis or scandal. And so you saw, the classic was 1929 stock market crash in the US, what really caused the creation of the SEC and a much more effective enforcement of insider trading laws there. And then similarly, the 1987 market crash was the impetus for much more effective enforcement in Europe and a lot of the rest of the Western world. So the first thing is having the right laws. I won't go into all of this detail because I am a little bit short on time, but I think some of the most important aspects here are making sure that you have a range of outcomes, that you have both criminal outcomes so that you can actually put people in jail for insider trading, but also that you have administrative outcomes for less serious cases or cases where you may not be able to reach a criminal standard, so that you have a hierarchy of sanctions that you can impose and a variety of courses of action that you can take. But you also have to make sure that your penalties are credible deterrents. That is, that the penalty that you are imposing on people who engage in insider trading is sufficiently serious that you will deter others from doing the same thing. And so what you have to think about is, first of all, when somebody who is a risk taker thinks about, okay, should I engage in this conduct? They will make a calculation, and that calculation will be, first of all, what are my chances of getting caught and actually action being taken against me? And what sort of sanction will be imposed on me? And if they make that calculation and say the chances of getting caught and the sanction which will be imposed on me is lower than the benefit I will receive from engaging in that conduct, then they will take the risk. So what you have to do is change that equation. You have to increase the probability that they're going to get caught, and you have to really increase the size of the penalty that they will suffer as a result. And at that stage, you will see a change in behaviour. The UK FCA produces something called their market cleanliness statistic. And what that does is it measures the amount of price movement before takeover announcements in the market. And what they did was they then looked at, and they produce this every year, and then they looked at that, they compared that to the action they were taking in terms of insider trading enforcement. And what they found was when they started to do public searches and charging of insiders and taking criminal action against insiders, that market cleanliness statistic improved. So it went from something like on 30% of occasions there was price movements before announcements down to 18% as a result of them taking serious criminal action. But then when they stopped, when there was a lull, they didn't have so many prosecutions that they were taking, so many convictions, then all of a sudden then that thing started to tick up. So what that shows as well is that you have to be consistent. You have to keep going. So it's all very well to get one or two successful convictions, but you have to keep going. Otherwise, people have short memories, they forget about that, and then once again they start to take the risk. The other thing which I mention here is your continuous disclosure rules. Having good continuous disclosure rules will help to close the window of opportunity for insiders. So how you define the information that has to be disclosed to the market will also have an impact on the opportunity for insider trading. So if you have a disclosure regime which says you only have to announce a takeover when you've got a signed agreement or something, then that's going to be very, very late. And that's going to mean that there is a big opportunity for people prior to that thing being signed to start trading. Whereas if you change that and you bring that point forward and you say, well, actually, it's at the point when there is a high likelihood that you are going to enter into a takeover transaction or be subject to a takeover offer. At that point, you have to make an announcement. Then you're closing down, you're making that period of time for the opportunity, the window of opportunity for insider trading then becomes much smaller. And so you can have a benefit that way. The other sorts of things you can do is you can have blackout periods for directors and insiders within companies in terms of trading ahead of results announcements. And they do that in the UAE. They make regular announcements in the UAE. Okay, the blackout period has started, and so insiders can't trade from now until the point when they're announced. And so those things help. But at the end of the day, it is... It is it is important to actually enforce the insider trading rules. So then this is probably the most important part of the presentation, and this is, well, how do you do this in relation to your investigators? And having well-resourced and skilled investigators is critical, and also having an effective strategy and methodology for investigating insider trading is also critical. And I've sort of summarised that as grab the devices and follow the money. So what do you need? You need three things. The first thing you need is skilled investigators. So you need investigators who have a legal background, have a law enforcement background, but most critically have a trading background. So if you can get people who have had experience trading in securities markets, so who have a broking background or a financial analyst background or have financial qualifications, then you need people who understand how markets work. And you also need people who have very good analytical skills, so they can analyse data and see the patterns and draw conclusions from those patterns. So you need people of that calibre. And then you need resources. You need technological resources. So you need to have the right sort of software which you can use and systems and data storage, so that you can take relatively large volumes of data, and then you can interrogate that data, you can sort the data, and then you can present it in a way which is going to be persuasive to a court, but also which is going to tell you what's happened. So in terms of that strategy, what do you do? So what you're doing in terms of any insider trading investigation, you're running a sort of two parallel investigations, if you like. You're investigating the information itself. So you're looking at the information and you're saying, when did this information crystallise? So first of all, what is the nature of the information? How are we going to characterise this inside information as inside information? And so you might say the information is the fact that the company results were going to be 25% lower than a forecast. So that might be your inside information. And then you say, when did that information crystallise? At what point did the company know that was going to be the case? And then you take that point in time, and then you say, at that point in time, who knew that information? And often with insider trading investigations, you'll get from the company what's called an insider trading list. And that will be what the company says is the people who knew the information. Now, I never trust those lists because the companies don't usually do a sort of a good enough job of really looking to think who were all the people who knew that information. So you actually have to investigate that yourself. You have to go in and you have to get emails and you have to get all the communications and understand who was doing what, who were the advisors, who was involved with the advisors, who was printing the prospectus if it's a takeover. And so you really need to have a very wide net of all those people who knew that information at that time, and then you need to work out and who knew the information subsequently and at what time did they know the information. So then you've got that on one side, and then on the other side you look at the trading. So you look at your trading and you analyse your trading, and you look at that, as I said, the pattern of trading ahead of the announcement. And so what you'll see is that trading's relatively flat, and then all of a sudden it starts to do this, and then there's your announcement, and then it might hopefully keep going up, or it might go flat if it's Mexico, but it should keep going up. But what you're doing then is you're looking, as this this sort of slope starts to go up. Who are the people who are trading at the beginning? When that price rise first starts, who are the people who are doing that in large volume? Because those people are likely to be your insiders. And the other thing to do is you look at derivatives. So you look at CFDs, contracts for difference, you look at options, you look at futures. Which people are trading those derivative products around the time that the information is crystallized or shortly thereafter? Because it's likely that those people are insiders as well, because the thing about derivative products is they're leveraged, and so you can get a high return for a small initial outlay. And that carries a lot of risk, but if you're an insider, then it doesn't carry any risk at all. So if you're an insider and you want to make the most of your inside information, then trading in a derivative will help you do that. So they're the sort of people you look for. And so once you've identified these are my potential insiders, then you try and match the two together. So then what you do is you're looking for links between these people who are trading, who look like they're trading on inside information, and the people who have the information, and you see, okay, where's the relationship? And so what you're looking at is family relationships, you're looking for business relationships, you're looking for, did they go to the same school together, did they go to the same university together? So you need to trawl through their social media, LinkedIn, and these sorts of things. Use that information, the public information, about who their relationships are, and also you need to start to ask questions to find out who's doing that. But the other thing which is very useful, of course, is to get telephone records, because if you can see the telephone communications around the time of the thing, if you get the telephone records for the people who look like the insiders, and you get the telephone numbers for the people who are trading, and then you try and find calls between those people, that will also help, or other communications between those people. And then once you've identified who you think the potential insiders are and who you think the potential traders are, then once you have enough information, then you try and get your evidence. And the best way to do that, as I say, is grab the devices. Because traditionally the biggest difficulty with enforcing insider trading laws is proving the passage of the information. And that may be over a telephone line, or it may be in a coffee shop, in which case, it's much more difficult to establish. But thankfully, in this day and age, people use electronic devices like telephone calls. And so you will see in instant messaging, text messages, and things like that, you'll see information being passed, which would have previously been passed over a telephone line. And so if it's like a Bloomberg IM or whatever, then you might be able to get that from a company. But if it's WhatsApp, you won't be able to get that independently. There's no way you can find a WhatsApp message. The only way to see the WhatsApp message is to get the device that WhatsApp message is on. And so what you need to be able to do is conduct a search, do a search where you go in and you take that device before the person who owns the device has a chance to delete what's on it. And you need to also at the same time get the password, obviously, so you can access the device. And if you can do that, then you've got a much better chance of finding those communications. Okay, all right, sorry, just a couple of final points, sorry. And then the other thing, the only other point I would make is follow the money. So do cash tracing. So once again, the other way to connect traders to insiders is to show a passage of money between them. So getting bank records as well will be another way of actually following that trail and proving that relationship. And what you need to do is you need to get all of that data, so the trading data, all the data around the communications relating to the inside activity, all of the banking data showing the passing of money, and you put that all together and you have a chronology so that you can see the sequence in which things are happening, and that's very good for creating a circumstantial evidence that insider trading has happened. And then finally, I would say get an account from the suspect in relation to their reasons for trading. Okay.